I wish I could be a brand new lawyer in today's environment because the speed at which you can become really good at what you do and profitable at what you do is so much faster now. Welcome back, everyone. Craig and Leah here today. How are you today, Leah?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Nice.
Had a good, productive couple of weeks since my trial. And yeah, just trying to dig out, really move forward. Got a lot of videos coming out. And TikTok, I don't know. TikTok is the best place in the world. I don't know. Don't ask me why.
This is not a sponsored podcast episode.
No, I hope someday we have sponsors. So yeah, we've been making a lot of videos. Next week, I'm going to South Carolina, assuming flights aren't getting canceled because of the shutdown. Yeah. But I'm going to a conference on AI and the law. Super excited about that one. So I'm going over there for a couple days in South Carolina.
You want to talk about what you've recently been doing last week and was it this week?
Yeah, well, so yesterday I was in Davenport, Iowa, and it actually kind of segues nicely to the topic today, which we were going to talk about how the law has changed, how the practice of law, not necessarily the law itself, but how the practice of law has changed in the 20 years that I've been doing this. For all the advancements and improvements, and we'll talk about those in a little bit, there's still some things that are just clunky and drive me crazy. So yesterday I had to go to Davenport, Iowa, which for me is about 3.5 hours each way. And I was going down for a mandatory small claims appearance, or I had to have one of my clients there as a witness because it was scheduled for a mandatory mediation in person. And then if the other side showed up and we didn't get it resolved at mediation, then we would have a trial immediately after, a magistrate trial. So not a jury trial, but like a 30-minute bench trial, we call them, to a judge. So I had to be ready for that. In every county, every state's a little different, and then even counties within states are different. So I found that there's wide variation in Iowa and how the courts handle things, especially small claims. And most counties now do all this stuff but remotely, but this one, nope, you come down in person. All right. So I drove down. So I spent 3.5 hours in the car. The other side didn't show up. So we waited 15 minutes for them not to show up, and then turned around and came back.
And you had to bring your client with you too.
Yep. My client, fortunately for them, they drove separately. The practice of law has gotten much better, I think, since I started, but there's still improvements to be made. And those kinds of things just shock me in a post-COVID world that stuff still exists. I use it as an excuse to swing by Iowa City and visit a friend of mine and his wife. So that was nice. It wasn't all lost, but spent a lot of time cruising across eastern Iowa.
Oh, yeah.
Yesterday.
You know how visually stimulating that could be?
Well, I did get some videos. I tried to capture videos where I could. And one of the things that I do now, this is most people won't understand any of this, but I'll do my best to explain it. So I care a lot about marketing. And it's trying to show up in Google search results. So if anyone's ever has a question about anything, or you're like, I'm looking for a hairdresser, I'm looking for a chiropractor, I'm looking for a place to get my oil changed, we all go to oil. We all go to Google, right? Hopefully you don't go to oil. We go to Google, right? And
search oil.
Yeah.
Enter.
Right. Yeah. I wonder what would happen. There probably isn't a lot of oil places in La Crosse. Lawyers, we are in the same boat in terms of, we know that people that don't have a lawyer will search for a lawyer and will go to Google. And then how does Google decide which lawyers to recommend? As you might expect, a certain amount of that is if you're willing to pay for it. So people at the top, sponsored, always, they're paying to be there. So just something to keep in mind. Doesn't mean they're bad lawyers, doesn't mean they're good lawyers, but whoever shows up at the very top, paid to be there.
Yep.
Okay.
It has to say sponsored.
Yep. It says sponsored for a reason. And then you go further down, and then if you ever see it, like there's the map, we call that the Google 3-pack. And there's 3 businesses, local businesses, supposedly local businesses will show up in there. So you're trying to get into that. Like that's one where you're really trying to show up in, because that is a non-paid and organic base where Google is basically saying, we see these as being credible and good or whatever. And they're doing all kinds of investigation, searching your Google reviews, looking your online profiles, things like that. They're always fighting for that. So I'm always trying to figure out who my competition is. And I'm just outside the the 3-pack on the
Mhm.
areas that I'm after, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to change that. And so what I do when I go travel is every time I come into a new town, I stop,
Mhm.
I pull over, and I search for, let's say, truck accident lawyer near me, farm accident lawyer near me. Those are the two big ones that I'm trying to
Break into.
win, right? And so every city I'd stop and I do that, and I'd screenshot it to find out who the competition is so that we can go and
Mhm.
reverse engineer and figure out how to leapfrog them. That was so it wasn't all lost. I there's a lot of little towns along the way
Mhm.
between here and in southeastern Iowa, so I was doing that as well.
Well, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah, that is probably one of the few ways to make Iowa exciting to drive through. Sorry, all you Iowans.
Yes.
I was born in Iowa, I was raised there, and so you're just going to have to be okay with that. The biggest thing I miss about Iowa is the deer hunting. Anyway, yep, I was down in Iowa for that, but it got me thinking because, like I said, this is so silly that I'm driving 3.5 hours. If I had to bet money, I would have guaranteed you this person wasn't going to show up anyway, so it was going to be all unnecessary. And that's how it used to always be. Right. When I was a young lawyer, everything was in person. Almost everything was in person. Very few things were not. And you were traveling all the time, and it was very inefficient, both for the lawyer and for the client. So fortunately, there's lots of things that have changed. And I would say COVID changed a lot of things. And then AI is just like the stuff that's changing now in the last year is just incredible. But there's been a lot of different things that have changed since I was a baby lawyer, and I wanted to talk about some of those things. Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So probably the biggest thing that changed from when I started out as a lawyer was the electronic e-filing.
Yes.
Now you two have been working in the law recently enough. You missed the time when everything was done by paper.
Yep.
So you wanted to file a lawsuit, you had a stack of them, and you had all these papers, and you take them down to the clerk of courts, and then you had to get each one file stamped. You couldn't make a photocopy of them. You had to file stamp it. Like this is kind of how weird some of the rules are, because if you took it down and filed it and made it photocopied and then served the other party with that photocopy, it was not valid, and they could claim I was not properly served. And if you do it at the end of the statute of limitations, you could literally lose your case because you served them with a photocopied version as opposed to identical version that had a little court clerk's stamp on it.
Well, the world wants to know, did that happen to you?
Once twice. Once it happened to me, and this is how I learned about that rule, and it was a complicated lawsuit. I had a new legal secretary who had come over from another firm, and we started this lawsuit, and we had parties across the country. So it was kind of a pain to serve them as it was. So I had her file the lawsuit, and unbeknownst to her, she ran photocopies after the fact, and we served all these parties. And by the time I figured it out, I was like, oh man. Fortunately, there was no deadlines that we were dealing with. What you had to do back then is actually go down and get the clerk to recertify a set of pleadings, and it was very time consuming and expensive. And then we had to go out and reserve everyone. So that was kind of how I became exposed to the rule, because I hadn't really thought about it too much before then. So that was how it had affected me the first time. Now that's all changed now with electronic filing. Literally, you just e-file it and then you print them. So it's silly. It's sort of silly how we used to dismiss cases for it, and now it's just like everyone does. But there was another time, it wasn't my case, but it was a case in this office where the other side did that. And it was at the end of the statute of limitations, and their case was dismissed and went up on appeal. And so they lost on that technicality. It's a technicality, but it was under the rules. So those are some of the things you had to deal with back when everything was done in paper. And so and the other thing was this: when you have deadlines for things, you had to get it down to the courthouse before 5 o'clock or 4:30. And if you missed that and the clerk didn't stamp it that day, it was late, right? And so paper filing was nerve-wracking when you were on days of deadlines, because you needed to get down there and make sure you had time, and you or your secretary didn't break down on the way to the courthouse, especially if it's not close. I remember one time I had to drive a stack of papers down to the Court of Appeals in Madison because I had to file a bunch of briefs on an appeal. That was just something you dealt with, right? Yeah. So filing was much more nerve-wracking back then. Well, then thank goodness they came up with electronic e-filing, and now you can do it all on a computer, and you can serve through that. And so that
Mhm.
has revolutionized it. Oh my gosh, that is saves so many trees, and it just makes it so much quicker to do the things that you do if you're a litigator like I am.
Now you have to deal with internet connections or the web page being down. That can be an unforeseen
Yeah,
issue.
you can have those issues, and that is true. And I've had some of those. Now one of the things that changed is with the electronic filing, you can file up until midnight. Which
Ooh.
bad thing is for people like me that sometimes wait until the last minute for things. It's not ready to go by the time my staff leaves at 5 o'clock, and either I have to beg them to stay,
Mhm.
or I'm trying to do it myself at 8 o'clock at night,
Mhm.
and I don't like that either.
Hmm.
But it's nice to have that option if you
Mhm.
have to. So yeah, there's very few drawbacks to electronic
Yeah.
e-filing, and it's almost all good. And then different states rolled it out differently. So I think we
Ah.
had them in Wisconsin first, but Minnesota didn't.
Mhm.
And so that was really hard. We're kind of used to
Yeah.
electronic e-filing, and then to have to do stuff in states that didn't. Oh my gosh, just wanted to gouge your eyes out. It was so bad. But now pretty much everything is electronic e-filing. So that's a huge.
Yeah. So other than paper and paper filing and maybe not getting copies or faxes accepted, what else did you think about?
Well, speaking of that, so in addition to the electronic e-filing, it has been the move towards a more of a paperless
Mm.
system. I still have them. I still have what we call banker boxes of
Oh,
of
right.
of files, but I'm pretty much entirely paperless now
Mhm.
in that I have an electronic set of my entire file.
Mhm.
Everything I produced, everything that the other sides produced, it's an electronic program. You print stuff as you need it
Mhm.
because sometimes it's just nicer to hold a piece of paper up than
Mhm.
to look on a computer screen. But not printing 10,000 pages of medical records, for
Mhm.
example, not having to, mail everything
Yeah.
or make copies and send it to the client. Now you email it to them, and then
Mhm.
you keep a copy of the email in your
Mhm.
file. That has been huge. And then like just like sharing documents with
Mm.
the other side or with experts. Now you can send them a Dropbox link and
Mhm.
whatever. But that wasn't a thing when I was a new lawyer. Everything, you sent them a huge stack of papers, and they went through it and marked it, and everything got lost. And so thankfully, we probably as a profession adopted that a lot slower than most.
Mm.
And there's still firms and lawyers out there that are purely paper, and I
Yep.
don't know how they would do it. I couldn't work there. But most of us have gotten to we're pretty much paperless. So that's been a huge help
Mhm.
for both lawyers and for clients, I think.
Absolutely.
So um probably a third thing is kind of I've already kind of touched on a little bit, but so much now is done virtually. A lot of court hearings are done by
Mm.
Zoom, and I'm trying to remember if we really had any Zoom court hearings before COVID. I can't remember. It was sometimes okay, you could do basic like scheduling conferences by telephone.
Mm.
That was nice. You didn't have to
Mhm.
like drive to the courthouse. But as you can imagine, with phone conferences, you have multiple parties. It's hard, like you always had to identify who was speaking
Yep.
because you got to have a record of it. And
Mhm.
then like there'd be applause, and then two people start talking at the same time, and then you stop, and then two people start talking again at the same time. So it was not very clean. It was barely a step up from going in person, right?
Mhm.
But so we had telephone stuff, but very little of it until COVID. But I remember I had done one, and I would say like depositions of witnesses was always done in person.
Yeah.
Like in a rare situation, you might listen into a
Mhm.
deposition by telephone if you were just kind of more of a bystander, if you
Mhm.
weren't actively involved in it. Because if you were taking the deposition and you had exhibits and things that you had to like show to a witness, you had to be there in person.
Yeah.
But I remember I did a Zoom deposition probably 2 or 3 years before COVID, and it was a novel thing. I had to take a deposition of an expert in South Carolina, I think, or Georgia, somewhere
Uh-huh.
down there. It was going to be really difficult to get to them and expensive,
Mhm.
and so we started looking, and they're like, "Oh, we can do these by Zoom."
Mm.
And at that time, I don't know if the internet wasn't as good, but we had to like go to a place in Madison with a high speed internet connection, or at least we thought we
Wow.
did.
Mhm.
They're like, what do we do if there's like if it freezes or
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
glitches? What's the transcript?
Mhm.
So all these things you're like, this will never work. That this can't possibly be a thing. But I did that. And then when COVID happened, like we were just forced to deal with it and realized there was all the things we were paranoid about were like non-issues.
Yeah.
And so now almost all my depositions are done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just great for lawyers, great for clients. What you pay your lawyers is a lot less because you don't travel. I think the depositions are better because I'm doing it from my own computer on my own desk. It's not what I bring with me in a car or an airplane. I think it's actually better because then you can put like documents on the screen in front of the witness. And then I pretty much record all my depositions now. And so what I figured out is the money I saved by not traveling for depositions, I would just use to pay to have those video depositions recorded. And so that's been a huge improvement in terms of like scheduling. And like I said, you don't have to worry about travel and stuff like that.
And our experts, all of them pretty open to that.
Oh, yeah.
And they do that
They almost like, what the heck, I got to come in person, right? and it's now starting to come into the trial space, right?
Ooh.
Now I've been pretty, I would say, aggressive and progressive in terms of like, like I said, I was playing with Zoom a little bit before everyone else was. I was really trying to get to more of a remote type, flexible type work schedule before everyone was. But trials, like that witness has to be the person, right? But like the last trial I had, that was my dilemma. My main expert, do I bring him up from Georgia and spend a ton of money, which I did, to get him up there, or do I put him on in front of Zoom, on Zoom in front of this jury? And that I'm not quite ready to trust Zoom for my main witness, but the defense did. They had two of their doctors. We had one from San Francisco and one from Connecticut.
Wow.
Here by Zoom, right in the courtroom, and it worked great. So that's going to be the next thing pretty soon. And even during COVID, some places were holding trials by Zoom. So like jurors were at home. Again, something you would have thought was absolutely unthinkable until it became necessary. So I think that'll be the next thing. I think everything will just be done remotely. Travel will be the exception to the so we're not quite there yet, but I think it's coming. So I'm looking forward to that for sure.
So with Zoom, you get Zoom depositions and maybe Zoom trials. The next step is AI. So what have you seen about that in the courtroom, in your casework, in your day-to-day life as a lawyer?
Yeah, I'm not sure I've totally grasped how AI has changed so much already. Like it feels like we just went from like never hearing of AI until like the next day, like everyone's using it. Like it was so fast. I was definitely one of the earliest ones, at least let's say in my office, in my sphere, use it. The biggest I think fear people had of AI is because as attorneys, we have duties of confidentiality. We're often dealing with very sensitive information, medical records, people's confidential information, communications. That was for sure the biggest initial barrier in the legal scope, the legal scape for AI because of that confidentiality. So there's different ways around it. So like certain AI programs are what we call a closed universe and others are not. So generally speaking, you want a closed universe thing where your information doesn't get shared with anyone. But, AI is like, for example, if you have a meeting with someone, you record that and then let AI create a transcript and notes. Oh my gosh. AI is incredible for like reviewing, analyzing, and summarizing large piles of documents, something we deal with a lot, right? The amount of time it saves and the degree of accuracy is so incredible. So AI is great if you're using it within, like I said, kind of a closed universe and you're asking it to analyze this set of documents. It doesn't really hallucinate, as they say, when it's dealing with your stuff. It hallucinates if you say, hey, go out and do some legal research for me and stuff like that too, right? And that's where people run into problems. I don't really use it for that. I do it a lot for brainstorming ideas, but like our client software has an AI agent in it, and like things you can ask it, like provide me with a summary of the most recent email correspondence. You're like, okay, where are we at? Are we trying to schedule depositions? Is there a settlement offer out there? And you can use that and get like kind of an instantaneous update on where things are at. That saves a lot of time. I use it a lot for, like I said, I like to use it to prepare for depositions. So maybe I'll get a witness's report and I'll have different documents. And I'm like, give me an outline to prepare the deposition of this witness on this topic. And I did that also in my trial. And I tell you, it is very accurate and very fast. So that it just saves a tremendous amount of time. And it's very, very accurate, more accurate than humans, I would say. It's not perfect, but humans aren't perfect either. And so I use it for a lot.
Yeah.
I use it for a lot of stuff. That's only going to, become more and more evident. And like next week, I'm going to South Carolina for a conference just on AI and the law.
Yeah.
AI is especially helpful to lawyers like me that practice primarily on contingency because it saves you time. It's a little more of a difficult question for more traditional attorneys that bill by the hour because, okay, now what do you do? Something that you used to charge a client for an hour of work now takes you 5 minutes. How do you charge them? And I would say that what's interesting about that and what I think AI has really done is it's changed. It is in the process of changing how the economics of the legal system and how we charge and how we pay lawyers.
Yeah, that might be welcome news for clients.
Flat fees, I think, traditionally hourly billing was like you just, because you didn't know exactly how the case was going to go or how much time it would take. You're just billing so much per hour and, and it was difficult for the lawyer and difficult for the client to not really know how much something was going to cost, right? With flat fees, you kind of eliminate that. You say, okay, regardless of how much time it takes, this is the price. And you sort of try to find a spot that is sort of in the middle of what the different, how much time, how much work it might take. AI is making that possible. And I think that is going to be the biggest improvement in the practice of law for clients and for lawyers is the predictability of cost. And AI is going to be a fundamental part of that, especially for, like, say, any kind of traditional hourly billing, which is pretty much everyone but personal injury lawyers that do stuff on contingency, right? So most of my work is I get paid a percentage of whatever I recover for you. And if I don't recover anything for you, you don't owe me anything. Most practice areas don't work that way, or you can't. Like, you actually can't do that by the ethical rules in divorce cases.
Oh.
Criminal defense, right? Those have traditionally been done hourly, and that I think is in the process of changing to more of a flat fee model. And AI is really being a huge part of that. And so that's, I think, is great. Like, I think that is outstanding because I don't know a lawyer that likes hourly billing. I don't like it. Clients don't like it, but there was never really a good way around it. But this is really changing, I think, for the better.
Good. Did you have another point that you wanted to cover about how technology has changed your practice?
Yeah. So I would say that it has certainly made possible a much better quality of life for attorneys and staff, right? And I would say things have changed a lot from, like, let's say 40 years ago to 20 years ago, where it used to be you as a young attorney, you came in and you just build and grind it out the work day in and day out, 7 days a week. And there's still firms that are like that. There's still lawyers that are like that. But, it's hard. You have a family, your wife and your kids, or your husband and your kids want to see you. And the technology, the ability to work remotely, have laptops, smartphones are that has made an enormous difference in the quality of life of attorneys if they take advantage of that. And now, for a lot of us, or a lot of people, they just began packing more work into that time. They just kept working just as many, but they just doing more work. So they became slaves to the technology. So you can become slaves to it. You both know from experience with me that email is one of those things that can really consume your life. Email is great. It allows very rapid communication with clients, with other lawyers, but it can also just be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so I have had to take steps to, like, separate myself from my email, delegate access to that. And I think a lot of lawyers are kind of stuck in that trap, or they just can never, they're constantly just putting out fires in there. So there is definitely some disadvantage. There's been some, I think things are worse in some respects. Because with all these things, these tools, these things can become tools or hindrances to your quality of life. I try very hard to find ways to use them to make my life better and my clients' experience better, and make the work we do more efficient and affordable. But like I said, with all things, there can be kind of a catch-22.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think clients have become more used to having access to people, right?
Yeah.
But what do you mean? I emailed you an hour ago. You haven't responded to me? So that is hard. That is hard. It is hard to, that isn't always how it works. Like yesterday, I was out of the office all day. I was not, I was not able to return calls right away because I was on the road or in court, right? 3 weeks ago, I was in trial for a week. Good luck trying to get a hold of me. Like I'm not going to have the mental bandwidth to talk to you. So that's a challenge in the law is how do you, you want your clients to be happy. You want them to be informed, but you can become way too accessible. So yeah, I would say the other thing I would say is this is really on the advertising and marketing, which is what's what we're doing right now. Let's be honest. This is a video podcast. This is a very new thing. It used to be lawyers couldn't advertise at all. It was a big thing just to be able to be in the yellow pages. And that's pretty much all the advertisement was when I was a new lawyer, is your phone book. Got websites, and now with YouTube channels and TikTok. Now there aren't very many lawyers that are into that space, but
still the billboard lawyers and the bus bench lawyers. I see that.
Yep. But this what we're doing right now is such an amazing thing because it allows people to see lawyers for who they really are. Yeah. As opposed to what you can't tell anything about a lawyer from a billboard. You can't even really tell much about them from a website. Yeah. This you get that actual human engagement. So this is really this is great. Like I wish I could be a brand new lawyer in today's environment because the speed at which you can become really good at what you do and profitable at what you do is so much faster now than started. Yeah, without sacrificing your time and your health and all the rest of that. Yep, exactly. And that's true, I think, for pretty much any profession now. But for lawyers, it's exactly true. So what can listeners look forward to next time? Are we going to be in touch next week, or will you be at your conference? We'll have to figure something out. We'll have to record virtually, which is nice. Again, it's nice having those options. Maybe I'll record something from South Carolina. I'll always bring my camera along, be making videos of that. I'm in the process of constructing another website. So I'm really excited about that. We were talking about that before we started recording, but I have a lot of really fun stuff coming out that I think people are going to find helpful and useful. Yeah. You're going to want to stay tuned to this. So we always appreciate you watching, especially if you comment and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. Let us know if you have questions or ideas, things you'd like us to talk about. And we always enjoy that. So otherwise, we'll be back probably next week. Yeah. See you next time. All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Leah. Yeah, thanks, Greg. And until next time, everyone. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.